bird on a tree. I'm just sitting here. I got time. It's clear to see from up here. The world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful.
Hi everyone. We're in Soul Talk, and today my name is Monica Ramirez, Warrior of Love, and today we're presenting a very amazing artist that I find in one of the art exhibits that I participated because his art is really amazing. And we're gonna talk who's the artist behind that amazing art that you're gonna see a little piece that he have. I have seen big ones, but but this stuff, the transportation is easier with painters, but very hard for sculptures to transport our art so easy. And we're gonna talk also about that. And let me present you with Sean Hughes. And let me tell you a little bit who he is. He began his art. He began the type of art was for him in reality. He struggles with PTSD and standards therapy. Did not help him. Any therapy did not help him with his emotional scars in the past. He started welding scrappy metal together to teach himself the process. He saw symbolisms in the scrap metal and objects and the objects past it point usefulness to the point of usefulness. His idea he could create a new piece and objects. He's hesitant to call himself an artist. He don't want to call himself an artist. He seems is a form of expressing his thoughts and emotions, his feelings, or ideas when the words won't suffice. He prefers still using physical methods of manipulation the welding to create a piece, as this three-dimensional object is more satisfying. But he's not limited to these materials. He also paints in both in acrylics and in oils, collages, and recently he began working in copper. And I wanted to ask you about that, about the copper. I'm always wanted to learn more things. And Ian, he's partially a post era American artwork, otherwise known as expressionism. He speaks to himself because he's not simply reproduction of an object or scene. It has been a deeper, greatest philosophy for that is specific to the artist and the time and possess space in which the work it is done. See, and you don't send me your bio where you have exhibit and things like that. But at the end, in reality, that doesn't matter because artists we are not what we study or where we exhibit. It's what we express and the quality, the way we can express our art. And you do an original work, amazing, great work. I study sculpture for 4 years with Douglas Clark, and and my God, I don't even start doing what you do. It is really my pleasure to have you here. Thank you for accepting this invitation for talking with us in the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
I wanted to ask you, since when you start doing this?
I started doing metal sculpture probably about 5 years ago. I've always been kind of interested in art and doodled and played around with it, but probably about 5 years ago is when I really started getting into creating metal sculpture. I kind of taught myself how to weld and used all sorts of scrap pieces that I could find people would give me and started putting things together.
Wow. And from the different kinds of sculpture that I have experimented, the easy one is usually clay. And it's beside that it's very relaxing and calming and so forth, feeling the clay in your hands. Do you choose one of the difficult ones?
Well, yeah, I guess you could say it's difficult. The material speaks to me. I really enjoy working with the metal. And clay is almost like it's a different type of concept where you're bringing something from a very raw state that you know has never been used before, doesn't have a use, doesn't have much of a history, and you're creating it. Where the steel, especially the steel I use, it has a history. It's reclaimed or recycled metal. So it served a purpose already. It had a purpose, and now rather than putting it to a scrapyard and having it melted and reused or thrown away, I use it in a sculpture.
I understand what you're saying. Sometimes I am collecting a bunch of pieces of things, and my kids tell me, "Mom, you're becoming a hoarder," because I got so many crystals, or I find a piece of wood or a piece of metal, whatever I feel like is speaking to me, and it's like, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I'm gonna save it. And I bet your garden looks like that, right?
Yes, yes, and it's very much that type of thing. I you can buy steel, flat and nice and perfect, but it does not have the wear and tear, oxidation and rust, and a lot of times the pieces that I get are already bent, and we're talking, thicker pieces of steel that machinery or something has caused the distortion. But you can find this beauty in it, and it almost speaks, where it says that it wants to become something.
And I read in your bio that you learn by yourself, correct?
Pretty much, yes. I have well, I've met quite a few artists and learned things along this way, and it's continue. It's a path journey that you continue to learn. But yeah, pretty much self-taught.
And from also you were saying that you find more, you like more abstract expressionism. Which artist did from painting or sculptor or both of them
Well,
inspire you more?
well, yeah, it's funny because I'm a metal. I prefer the metal sculpture, the steel. But you find inspiration in everything. I find it in potters and clay working, in painting and drawing, sketches, architecture, you name it. Inspiration is really where you find it and what inspires you. Um, it's the abstract expressionist period, right around 1950s, let's say, post World War II, really interest me because the concentration of artists in one spot, and not just your painters and not just sculptors, but you had poets and philosophers and authors and writers. And so you had this giant melting pot of creativity, and amazing work came out of that.
And do you have your favorites that inspire you? That
Oh, well, I'm learning more about each artist. Obviously, David Smith was a sculptor at the time. He basically the father of American steel sculpture. He started using steel and welding. Prior to that, very very little was done. Robert Motherwell really speaks to me. His work. Um, uh, pretty much, a lot of the artists there, but those two specifically really speak to me. Also, Giacometti in Italy prior to the war, his work, especially figurative work. I have a thing for figures, so it's beautiful.
and I have seen a variety in your artwork. It's from religious to non-religious to political to different ones. But what inspired you more uh, to create these?
And I don't think you should. Well, the great thing about art is you shouldn't be limited, and you find things that you enjoy or find things that are the most rewarding, but to not be narrowed. But I would say that the ones that are closest to my heart are the figures. A lot of them are representations of myself and the struggles I've had or continue to have, and it's my attempt to try to express a feeling or emotion, maybe a pain, that I think is universal. And sculpture and art is perfect for that because although we might have a language barrier, the art will speak, and you know it works great that way.
Then basically, through your sculpture, you're putting your emotions in there.
Oh, very much, because it's especially in the material, it takes physical exertion, hammering, bending, uh, you name it, and then obviously there's I get burns, little sparks and everything like that. It comes with the territory, but it's the idea, you're bleeding for your art or you're painting for your art, and it shows, I believe.
I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned in there in your bio about the PTSD,
Mhm.
how would art have helped you? And I understand how. I am a life coach and I work in therapy with people. But many of the viewers that are gonna see it right now or later, um, they might suffer from the same thing, and they're looking for escape or a kind of a therapy, something that works for them,
Yeah.
and they're probably in the same position that you were. So how it help you in your PTSD?
Well, and PTSD is such an odd thing because I can remember before I had PTSD, and because of that, you or a person with PTSD always kind of yearns to be that person again, and you're not. It's once you get it, once you have the issues that you have, it kind of forever changes you. And there are different things that happen during the process, that there's a lot of emotion inside of you. It can be from rage and anger to fear and being scared or just being completely depressed and sad. And it's really difficult for me to express that. Sitting and talking to a therapist or going through some sort of like cognitive behavioral therapy was really kind of difficult for me, because there I had a tough time seeing the end point and finding closure and things. And so when I found art and when I found specifically sculpture, I could I had the feeling, the emotion, and that's kind of where the abstract comes from, but I had the feeling or emotion, and I had the confusion or frustration, and so I would go out and work out how that felt into a piece of metal. And sometimes it didn't have to be literal. It could be I was making a fish or a bird. But the fact is, I was focusing and putting the energy into it and trying to express that feeling through the art. And so then when I would finish the piece, it was finding a sense of closure just for that time. And it doesn't necessarily last forever, but that's not what um, that's not always what you need. It's one day at a time. So if you can find that piece at that moment, you got to grasp it. And so that's where I found it. I could begin and create a piece, and work it through the process. And when I was finished, I felt that I was finished with it, and I could relax.
Wow, that is beautiful, and I hope the people that are passing through the same thing. I understand it as an artist, and it do is my therapy.
Hmm.
And I believe art is completely therapy. And I have worked actually with people, blind people, and teach them how to paint.
Hmm.
So, and for them, it was therapy. It
Yeah.
was knowing that they can do it. That it doesn't matter you went to college or not. That you don't have to be going with a teacher. That you want to express yourself. You can find a way or a technique or a form to do it, and
Uh,
that is beautiful.
yeah, it's well, I mean, and art is more than sculpting and more than painting. The art form of words, poetry. to verses for a song, or just writing a short story or something. Unfortunately, I've never been able to express myself in that way, but that is equally important and equally an art form. So anybody that is suffering or having trouble with, anxiety or depression, art is definitely a therapy.
Yeah. In fact, well, a lot of the holistic coaches are gonna put you to write.
Yes.
We're gonna put you in get a journal and let it out in one way or the other. But art is expressing in the way you do it. It is the best way to do it. Well, one of the best ways, because everybody has their own ways to do it,
Right.
and no form is the right one. I wanted to ask you also that I saw that you are a painter. I have never seen your artwork, and what style you do when you paint? Because
Well,
I have never been that lucky to see your paintings.
wait, I don't necessarily consider myself a painter, but I'm dabbling in paint, or I'm trying out paint, and it's just recently, just because sometimes you find yourself with a mental block or a creative block where I don't know where to go creatively from here for sculpture. And so I started learning, and I watched YouTube videos on the abstract expressionist artist, and um, read some books, or reading some books. And so I tried out different, or I'm trying out different abstract painting. I've dabbled a little bit lately with acrylic and some oils, and some other uh, different, I guess, materials, doing some sort of collage and such. It, I haven't shown anything, because that wasn't the final intent. It was more of just an experience for me to learn something, and the process of learning and trying something completely out of my comfort zone. Because
Yeah.
like I said, I am not a painter. So, but I'm trying, and uh, I guess it's facing fears, as maybe silly as maybe some might be, but there's definitely a fear, the insecurity that I'm not good enough, and I don't know what I'm doing, and so therefore, you try to face your fears, but which is they're very much a therapeutic.
Yes, I agree with you. Yes, and I believe all the artists will challenge that. I remember trying to paint some jewels with all the geometrical figures that I have inside, and the lights and the shadows, and I was like, oh my god! And I erase it and erase it and erase it, and but I'm so stubborn. So until I did it, finally I was like, okay, I did it. But it took
Hmm.
me many days actually to finally got it what I wanted to do. And just challenge yourself is one way to affront your fears and learning not to give up at the same time.
Right.
Yes. And I wanted to ask about you in your art. I saw that you're working with copper. What? How do you do it? Or in what way? Because there are thousands of ways of working with copper. But what do you mean with copper?
And there are a crazy amount of ways. What it is obvious obviously there's a correlation here, but I'm a fan of the mid-century modern, whether it be the architecture or the art, or so on. And one of the things that comes out of that in 1950s and 60s is the copper enamel on copper, and it's like the glass work with a copper dish, copper bowl, those types of things. And then they went in a little bit further, and you have the brutalist era, where they used a lot of the copper and the iron nails, and so on. And copper is such a great material because it's elemental. It's the very basic, and so you can work it, and it is very forgiving of how you work it. And it's very, very basic in working process. You heat it up and you pound it, and then you let it cool, and so on. So
Do you
the
put a kiln?
I have a small kiln
Okay.
that I purchased, and I'm still learning, and I'm teaching myself how to do it. So I have the enameling powder. You can purchase the pre-made copper dishes and everything, but what I did is that there's a local recycling center that had scrap of copper sheet that I guess a contractor had dropped off and turned in. So I purchased it from them and kind of set myself up with a little uh, kind of homemade coppersmithing area in my garage, and that's what I try to do. I heat it up with a torch and pound on it, and uh, there's a satisfaction out of making something like that.
My mother used to take classes, and she did a lot of enamel and copper when we were living in Mexico City,
Mm,
in the capital, and there's amazing pieces. It's basically painting. With that,
right.
but now you can use also crystal.
Mm,
There are many things as you can do. It's like you are like to experiment, and you don't have to follow the technical rules. Sometimes the mistakes are the best pieces.
right. Very much, very much. And if there are, I guess, sort of rules in art, but then they're not meant to be necessarily always followed. It's just a way of education, a way of teaching. But if I'm kind of the stubborn and rather than go through school, I'd rather just teach myself. And I'm going to mess up, and I understand that, and I accept that. But it's a way of looking at mistakes or looking at not doing something right, not as a failure, but as something, a lesson learned, and you learn something from it, and then you can apply that to all aspects of your life. So it teaches yourself patience and, and so on. So
Someone is saying, "What about a spiritual painting?" What I would say to our viewer that is asking that, I would say all painting is spiritual in a way, because spiritual, what it is our emotions. And I don't know any artist that create original pieces that is not using their emotions. So all the art that comes from our soul and heart of any artist. That's, or do you have something to say? Because she's asking, what about spiritual painting?
well, it it would, and then you have to get into defining what is spiritual, and kind of like you said, spiritual is individual feelings and thoughts and ideas and such. I've well, and like you've said, I've dabbled in some religious iconography. The Our Lady of Guadalupe sculptures that I made, and especially in Catholicism, there's this beautiful artwork in the religious iconography that is done. It, but like you said, I think any real artist, when applying their trade to something that they love, that their whole heart is in, it is very much spiritual. So I'd say 90% of what I make is very spiritual, at least to me. So, but that's kind of gets back to what I believe and what I feel, and probably one of the reasons that drew me to copper because of its properties.
And I have seen you in several art exhibits and photos in many other ones when I was looking for a photo for for the
Yeah.
publicity of the podcast. And what do you have exhibit? Because some viewers would like to know.
Well, it right now I don't believe I have anything really out there. I've exhibited through a couple local galleries. I believe the Phoenix Gallery in McAllen might still have a couple of my pieces. The I've shown at uh, well, Harlingen has a Harlingen Art Night, and it is the last Friday of the month. We just had it, and so there's several galleries and little, I guess, part-time galleries that are up that I've shown at. Um, uh, Camino's Art Studio. Um, let's see what else. There's a couple other San Benito. San Benito Museum Cultural Arts Center, I participated in a group show with the Our Lady de Guadalupe sculptures. So I've shown it a couple different places. Currently, I have 2 or 3 pieces in a virtual art exhibition. I'm sorry, um, with the VA for veteran artists. So I don't know where the website is for that, but it's a local little um, art show, art competition. But yeah, it's uh, most of it is if you look up my well, I post mostly on my Instagram for my art, and it's under Trapperjohnart. So it's kind of like a little pseudo name, but Trapperjohnart at Instagram has a lot of my stuff.
Rapper John Art in Instagram, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm posting it, guys, in the comments. So if you wanna check it out later on, right now listen to us, and later on you want to check it out. But it is because I don't have that in the information. But I will post it either way in the information and later on in YouTube. Because yes, the people should go and see your art because it's
Oh,
really
thank you. Yeah.
yes, and I have seen your. I do like to paint from all the virgins. I like to paint the Virgin of Guadalupe is my favorite because they say that's the only original.
Right.
The other ones are made by artists, and the Virgin of Guadalupe is the only one that it was painted by. I call it the divine, but it was not made by any human, and that's why I call it a divine.
Wow.
But well, and yes, I seen it and it's really amazing. I would like to you show us the sculpture that you have there, so that
Okay.
people can appreciate a little bit of your art because it's really really worth it.
All right. Let me see. I guess I'll just hold it up here if we can see this. Yeah. So this is part of a series that I made that were it's all steel, and it's based on an anatomical heart. And what I did, and it multifaceted, and it's little pieces of flat steel that are sculpted around a frame, metal frame that I had, so it looks sort of stitched, and obviously it has color to it. This is a red acrylic ink that I used and let it drip, and then sanded it down, and then clear coated it to give it that look, and then the clear coat gives it that shine. Now on the opposite side, it has well, quite a bit going on, and what this is I at one point had a few friends that were in the antique business and secondhand stores and such. So they would find anything from old sewing machines to um, typewriters to you name it. And so I started taking all the broken bits and the broken machines from them, and that's what I would use in these. So it's they have a depth to them, and if you see, this is a bobbin from an old sewing machine. There's some knobs, and actually it has a press for the numbers right there from an old stamping machine of some sort, and lever, little springs. And the point of this is just to be, layers and levels of, mix match parts and pieces that ordinarily, and once again, back to the concepts of the scrap metal art, but they had once served a purpose. They were once part of a machine that had a purpose, but it no longer serves its purpose. And a lot of these are like the older and analog machines that, because of the technology that we have now, um, they're not used. And so, what do we do with those parts and pieces? And so, I'm trying to celebrate kind of like a time in, where things are maybe a little more simple, or seemed a little more simple, analog, where uh, not so busy. And then the idea of I'm using these pieces, these small little bits that ordinarily would just, fall through the cracks, to be thrown into the trash or something. It's finding new life in my sculpture, which like I said in my little biography and such, and this is how I feel, is that I've found personal it's a symbol for me. Um, it was prior to the I had a physical injury and then my PTSD. I had a career and did something completely different, and when all of that happened, it kind of came to a stop. And one of the things I struggled with, and probably still struggle with, is having a purpose and having a renewed sense of purpose, and and feeling good about myself in that sense. And so that's where the symbolism comes in finding a new purpose for these parts rather than throwing them away.
That is beautiful. And that is a beautiful piece.
Thank
I
you.
love it. I really do. I have, because I understand that each piece that the artist creates, it have our own symbolism, what we wanted to project on it, and what we want to express, the emotions or thoughts or whatever it was. But for the viewer, they have a different meaning at the same time. So it is I always had this problem when someone asked me in a gallery, explain me your painting. Because when you explain them your piece as an artist, and please tell me if I'm wrong, because I would like to know. When they tell the spectators, tell me, explain me your piece, and you explain the piece how you wanted to plasmate it in the canvas or in the 3D or 2D, doesn't matter in which, or the song or whatever. Um, it may not concur with the viewer point of view, and then you might lose actually or a client, or you might win a client. It is a very tricky thing when you're trying to survive as an artist.
And that's very true. And it's something I struggle with, or I think every artist struggles with, is um and so that's where I think I like the abstract, and that's where I get into some of my sculptures, and I try to be I give an explanation as far as what it means to me, as far as a personal struggle, anxiety, depression, and something. But I try to give an explanation that is relatable. Is that no matter who you are, whether you have PTSD or not, you still know a feeling of anxiety. You still know feeling of fear. Or you still know depression. And so what you do is it's you you talk about a universal concept to them, and then you say, like, this was part of my personal journey and this is what I was trying to express. But I think and this is how I feel, where I try not to give too much of that in the art, because to each person viewing the art, maybe they see something different. They pull from their own past and their own histories, and they project that onto it. So even something as simple as titling a piece is difficult, because you're leading people in a direction, and I don't I don't think all the time they need to be led. I think they need to find what they're looking for. So
I love that answer. It is a very good answer, because yes, we lead them with a name and everything, or trying to explain them what it is. But also at the same time, I just discovered that there's a percentage of the human beings that they don't have internal thought, and that was very surprising and shocking for me. I thought that everybody have an internal thought, conversation, but no, not everybody has that.
mm,
So maybe a lot of those people are the ones that they might be our clients, and they might really do not understand what we were trying to express, but they want to understand. They do not understand it, but they want to understand it at the
yeah.
same time.
Yeah, and that gets down to the individual relationship you have with a client, where sometimes you get a repeat client. It's not just one purchase, and sometimes it's commission work. And they want to know more about you as the artist. They want to know more about where the art comes from. And that by all means, I think at the level of the comfort and the level of the relationship, be able to share it with. But I think in maybe a gallery, or a show setting, I think the least amount of information possible, I think is sometimes the best. You know, you want to give them a sense of idea, but you know, I think more of uh, find their own path to where that painting or that piece of art, what it does for them.
I do agree with that. And I wanted to ask you, do you do commission work? I imagine, right?
Yeah, I've done a couple pieces of commission art. What in commission art is a completely different thing because now you are into the business aspect of art, which I don't know of very many artists that like the business aspect of it. So, because when you start taking on commission pieces, you're taking on risk that you know it's not necessarily what they want, or maybe they'll back out of it. So you have to have some sort of financial guarantee in the business. But I've done some, and uh, you know, I don't have anything against doing commission work, but part of the art for me is doing um, what comes to me, what I see, and you know, I might find some pieces here and there, or it's basically it's an expression of me, and so doing commission piece kind of lacks that part. Now, I'm sure there's a artistic expression aspect of it, but it's not really from me. It's doing something that somebody else wants. So I find commission work kind of difficult.
It is. You're not planning to teach, or right now you're not teaching welding and doing sculpture.
No, no, I'm not teaching. If somebody wanted to learn how to weld, there'd be a lot more people better than me to learn from. And as far as artistically, well, I don't have an education background. And there are a lot of good art teachers out there that know what they're doing. Uh, there's still a lot of learning that I need to do and I want to do. And what I found was I'm not necessarily great in a full academic setting, like going to college. But what I'll do is I'll go on to Amazon and purchase old college textbooks in art and kind of teach myself. So, but no, I have not. I haven't even thought about teaching or anything. Maybe sometime down the road, some YouTube videos or something like that. But for right now, I'm enjoying my learning process.
And also there are different teachers. I have been teaching for 25 years art. I just
Mhm.
stopped about 3 years ago. But I've been teaching that, and you're gonna find all such a kind of different teachers. You don't have to be on a university level. It can be just the thing is something that I learned exhibiting all around the world. In fact, it was that the majority of the galleries they're not gonna ask you for your diploma, your college diploma.
Right.
They're gonna show you the photo. They wanna see the photographs if you have solo art exhibits, if you have or group art exhibits before. But that's it. They are gonna look for your piece of art, if they can the galleries, if they can sell it or not.
Mhm.
Not because you have doctors in this or in that.
Mhm.
They really don't care. And personally, I'm glad that I did not study art neither, because it would be a waste of money for because I don't want to be a I was an art teacher because we need to survive,
Mhm.
because it's very difficult to survive as an artist, but not because I enjoy. That was my whole thing, to become an art teacher.
Right.
My whole thing it was to be an artist. And going to that, how do you see that part? Do you? I have seen the division between. They even call us the ones that have the diploma, their university diploma, and so for the artists that we are not having the diploma, or we're not the bachelor's or something in art. They call us the outside artist, and the ones that they have the diploma, masters or doctors, whatever, they are the inside artist. How do you feel about that? Because there's a division between that when it's ridiculous when we're all creating art.
And there's always going to be a division because there's divisions in any career path, any professionalism. Some people feel the need to do the degrees,
Hmm.
and I don't feel the need that I need the degree, and I don't feel anything less of it. Um, but I know people who have degrees. I know people who have bachelors of fine arts and MFAs, and then it all depends on where they get their MFAs and then what they've done with it. Have they worked with other artists and tutelage and such? And what I found, which is kind of universal, is the level of knowledge the person has, and then are they pursuing more knowledge? And to me, that's the most fundamental thing, is that I want as much knowledge as I can, and I'm not really worried necessarily about where I get it as long as it's good knowledge. So a lot of times, like I said, I'll buy and purchase books and watch YouTube videos specifically about artists and genres, and listen to critical reviews of artists and shows, and try to learn from those things, and then obviously apply my own experience at it. Um, it's not formal, but I don't think it's necessary, and and art is one of those things that you're going to have to work hard at it, no matter what. But it the the definition of success is completely in the artist's hands. What do you consider successful is not necessarily the same as the next person. So that's the most important thing, is what is success.
I do agree with that statement completely. How do you see yourself with going with your art? And let's put it in 5 years.
Oof. Well, I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week or anything, but let's see, 5 years. Well, I I don't think I'll ever end or stop pursuing art and stop pursuing knowledge. Um, I I think I'm going to be exploring all different aspects of art, but I will stay with metal sculpture. It's what speaks to me, and I will continue doing that until I can't anymore. Um, I think I I am starting to, and I've begun to make larger pieces. Most of my pieces are about the size of this part. I have some larger pieces, like I believe you've seen the guitars that I've made, and so on, and those are usually about life size, and so they can hang on a wall, or but what I'm looking at is doing larger sculptures. It's 6 feet tall. There's one sculpture I'm working on that's 15 feet tall, and it's an outdoor sculpture. So, and it's more abstract. I have a thing with figures. I, I have a tendency to go to the figure because it's very telling of my, psychologically and spiritually, but I I put a lot on the figure, whether it be an angelic figure or a figure that represents me in some form or fashion. But I think I'll continue doing that, and then obviously continue doing, you know, testing myself with all different aspects. So
That is nice. Yeah. I I I haven't find someone that it used to be an artist full time, and then suddenly I understand that you have your blogs for a while, it can last, but you never can be an ex artist. Your mind is always gonna be creating something in your head. You might change methods or techniques, but at the end you're gonna go back to create something because it's a need for all of us.
yeah, well, in being well, and this is where I guess I have difficult times sometimes with the title. Uh, a- An artist is a title, but being artistic is part of you and part of fundamentally who you are, and so that you cannot change. You can change a title. I can, no longer be an artist. I am now a plumber or an electrician, because those are all titles for a trade. But the artistic part of me is part of my personality, part of my character, part of who I am is very fundamental, and so that never changes. So I don't try to get wrapped up in titles and whether I'm full-time artist or part-time, because no matter how much time you dedicate to it, your mind is there, your soul is there. So um, yeah.
And I have a one of my last questions that I wanted to ask is the majority of the viewers that are gonna see the podcast. Some of them are artists, but many of them are not gonna be artists. They are spectators, and they're not local. The majority, in fact, they're all over the world. So I would like you to explain them, because the people are not artists. They don't have to pass through the same issues that we artists we have to go, like paying our bills. So how hard is to survive as a sculptor or as an artist for has been for you, and don't forget to talk also how was it in the 2020.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I'm different. I'm lucky in I have the advantage that, well, one, my wife is successful in her career, so financially that's not a burden. And additionally, because of my PTSD and it's associated with my military service, I have a disability compensation through that as well. So um, the need to survive off of my art is not necessary, which is very freeing, because if it was, it would take quite a bit to do. And so for me, I get to focus on the therapeutic aspect of it, what it does for me emotionally and my mental health. But as an artist, and I have many friends who are artists that struggle, just because their their art, maybe their type of art, what they love and what it expresses themselves, doesn't necessarily sell because of the market that they're in, because of how they um, uh, how they show themselves, and what people want. Art is obviously a commodity, no different than anything else. So you have to have a public that wants and needs this, and then has disposable income to afford it. In 2020, well, it's still difficult because we're still in the grip of it, and so we're trying to open things back up, having art nights and art walks and gallery openings, and even limited and stuff. But we're still in the midst of everything. For artists, it was incredibly hard, because so much of uh, so much of our emotional aspect of artist is showing our work, being able to get it out there, and interacting with other people, and being in that moment. Making the art is one thing, but showing the art is a completely different thing. But at the same time, and what has helped me is the social media. I've really found that Instagram is the outlet for me, and it kind of levels the playing field, where um, I have I have followers and people that I follow that are from all over the world. So this day and age, I can see what an artist in Italy or in Argentina or wherever you want to, what they're doing, and how they're doing it. And so it is fascinating to me. It's awesome. And so there are many opportunities, but it takes that gets into the business aspect of art, which I try very hard to stay out of. But it's a lot of work, and for an artist, that you have to dedicate a certain amount of time to self promotion and sales and finding your niche, and it's tough.
It is. It is. I know it's part of our dream to find a manager, and he or she will be in charge of our selling our art, and we just create.
Yeah, I
But
haven't found them yet, but I'm still looking for them. So,
welcome to the club of millions of artists.
mhm,
We are looking for them because no, none of us, I think, we like that part.
right.
I don't know what it is, but it cuts a lot of our inspiration.
Yeah.
But yes, would you like something else to add to this conversation?
Well, I think that's it. Um, I hope maybe my story as far as how I use art and what I use it for, maybe will be inspiring to other people that are struggling with it with anything. It doesn't have to be specific. Sometimes your struggle is just a momentary thing, situational. But uh, I what I found is you have to express your emotions in some form or fashion, and find your way and keep keep a mental health perspective on things.
I agree with you. It was really my pleasure to have you here and to interview you and finally have this great conversation and to be inspired to all our listeners, the ones that are seeing it right now or the ones that are gonna see it later on. And we hope this helps someone else and really to one day you can see his Sean work beside the heart that it was amazing, uh, but uh, but the rest of his pieces that is really worth it. Follow him in his Instagram, and it really you should see his artwork. And and tomorrow in Soul Talk podcast, I got a cancellation, so I decided I'm gonna be doing a channel message for my higher self and a guided meditation at 7 p.m. In Soul Talk. And tomorrow we have the next podcast. And in the next week, in the Heart of the Artist Talk on Sunday, we have an amazing artist. She's a visual artist. Her name is Devanjana Bhattacharjee. I hope she don't kill me for saying bad her last name. She is she's in Myrtle Beach. She used to live here in Edinburgh, Texas, and she is an amazing artist. And we'll have her in the next Sunday at 6 p.m. And right now, I'm gonna start a mini class, how to raise your standards in a relationship and walk away from Mr. Wrong. That is gonna be open for 12 to 15 women, and it starts in October 2021 and 22 for the cost of $30. And for last, sorry guys, this podcast survive by your donations, and any donations will help. Even if you donate $1, I will put the link underneath so you can find the PayPal and to make your donations. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sean. And I really appreciate this interview.
You and me,
Bye bye. Thank you, everybody.
we meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. Sometimes you need to go and take a step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell